Ladies and gents, we'll be beginning in 5 minutes. Could we have all students taking their positions and seated? Prefects, please spread around the hall, right? We need to have 2 or 3 prefects upstairs as well to ensure that the top classes maintain discipline. Prefects, please spread around the hall, all right, so that we can look after both corridors as well as students at the back. All those who are standing, kindly come and take a seat. Teams who are coming in, we've got place up in front for you. Please do come up and sit in front. And of course, everyone here, do remember, cameras are on you constantly. You never know what picture might be taken. So please do be mindful of that while you're sitting down. Ladies and gentlemen, can we ask you all to please rise as both our chairperson and principal arrive at the hall at this point. Chairperson today is Dr. Mala Mehra and of course our principal, Mr. Dominic Everett. Thank you, everyone. You may be seated. First and foremost, welcome everyone for today's event. This is, of course, the final round of the Claude Martin debate, and very importantly named so, when Major General Claude Martin decided that in his will he would leave this beautiful establishment to children, he had one thing in mind, that is his home that you see, the beautiful building in the center of the campus. This beautiful building was to be left to the children of the city and outside to come in to be educated. And therefore, what better way to honor his name than to have a special academic event, a full-on Cambridge-style debate, proof that children are learning, that they are understanding on their own, that they are applying logic, and that they are making a difference in the world. So for this, we are very thankful to our founder for giving us everything that we have today. Ladies and gentlemen, I will call upon our college captain, Keshav Mittal, to go on with the proceedings for today.
Good morning, everyone. I will introduce the chairperson, after which we'll hand over the mic to Dr. Mala Mehra for further proceedings of the debate. Today with us, as our chairperson for the final debate, we have Dr. Mala Mehra. She is the principal and director of Horner College, Lucknow. Educated at Lamartine Girls College, Dr. Mehra went on to do her PhD from the Lucknow University in a quite an interesting subject, modern Indian history. Dr. Mala Mehra also holds the post of secretary for the Unaided Private Schools Association of Uttar Pradesh, as we know it, UPSA. Being an educationist, she has served as an executive member of the Association of Schools affiliated to the ISC for 2 terms and was the president of Associations of Schools affiliated to the Council for the Indian School Certificate Examinations. Most recently, Dr. Mehra was awarded a citation by the Deputy Chief Minister of Uttar Pradesh under the aegis of the Times of India Group for her contributions and exemplary services during the COVID period. Quite contrary to all of this, she has also recently obtained a black belt in Taekwondo from Kukiwon, Korea, and is also on the board of UP Goodwill Taekwondo Association. Having said that, we are very proud to have Dr. Mehra as the chairperson for today's debate. I request the audience seated to please acknowledge her presence with a thunderous round of applause. Having done with the introduction, I hand over the mic to Dr. Mehra for further proceedings of the debate. Over to you, ma'am.
Well, it's wonderful to be back at Lamartine Boys College. Back in the day, we were girls Lamartine would only come here for socials. And then, of course, life happens, and I've been here so many times, and it's always an honor to be back. I would like to thank Mr. Gary Everett for having me here this morning, Mr. Craig Kerr for thinking of me to chair this event, and also a very, very warm welcome to all our participants here this morning. And my chappie here is the timekeeper, very enthusiastic fellow. So thank you very much. I'm sure that we're all going to move ahead with propriety, and we're all going to move ahead with content with a lot of good content, not AI generated, hopefully, for the present moment. And we want to make sure that we also welcome our very esteemed guests as judges. Dr. Jaideep Chandra. May we please see you, Dr. Jaideep Chandra. Dr. Surabhi Modi Sahai. Welcome, ma'am. Dr. Mitali Tiwari. Welcome, ma'am. I will also tell you briefly about our judges, our very honorable judges. Dr. Jaideep Chandra. Dr. Jaideep Chandra is a distinguished medical professional based in Lucknow who began his career after graduating from Lamartine in 1987. He excelled in biology, earning the ICSE Biology Medal and later cleared CPMT in his first attempt. Dr. Chandra completed his MBBS in 1993 with a gold medal in orthopedics and honors in ophthalmics. Wow, that's one. Please, let's have a round of applause for this gold medalist here and our alma mater. His passion for neurosurgery led him to BHU Varanasi for his Master of Surgery and SGPGIMS for his Master in Shirurguai in Neurosurgery. I hope I got that Shirurguai, I got that word right, from 1998 to 2001. Since then, he has practiced independently in Lucknow, offering specialized medical care with a focus on neurosurgery. A very warm welcome, Dr. Chandra. Again, can we see you again? What an achiever from Lamartine Boys College. Thank you so much, sir, for being here this morning and taking out your precious time. Mrs. Mitali Tiwari, having 20 years of experience in teaching economics, entrepreneurship, and management, has developed significant expertise in these areas. She has conducted numerous training programs and workshops focused on entrepreneurship awareness for women, youth, and children, aiming to equip these groups with essential entrepreneurial skills and knowledge. In addition to her teaching and training roles, Mrs. Tiwari has made a substantial contribution to the academic community through her research. She has published papers and case studies in reputed international journals and books, showcasing her commitment to advancing knowledge in economics and entrepreneurship. Ma'am, very, very warm welcome to you, and a research scholar at that. Thank you so much for being here this morning. Dr. Surabhi Modi, an iconic person of Lucknow. Dr. Surabhi Modi is the founder and leader of Possible Education Private Limited, renowned for its test prep branch CLAT Possible, which operates in 14 Indian cities. Her organization also offers courses for CAT, IIPM, SAT, GMAT, CUET, and career counseling. A visiting faculty in film studies, Dr. Sahai was nominated for the Fulbright Scholarship in 2009 to University of California, Davis. She holds a PhD from Hindu College, Delhi University, where her thesis on Vishal Bharadwaj's Shakespeare adaptations is the first extensive study of its kind. Notably, Bharadwaj attended her thesis defense, marking a unique event in North Indian University history. Dr. Sahai's research focuses on women's representation in film, semiotic analysis, and promoting gender equality in cinema, literature, and folklore. Dr. Modi, please rise so that we can see this iconic person of the Lucknow city, and we are very proud of you, Dr. Sahai. And once again, welcome to Lamartine Boys College this morning. And I hope that the judging is going to be quick, and it's going to be spiffy, and it's going to be content-based. The topic for the debate is, boys, please note, it is justifiable to force population control measures in overpopulated regions. And I repeat, it is justifiable to force population control measures in overpopulated regions. Proposing the motion is Lamatania College, Lucknow, represented by their principal speaker, Vinayak Tandon. May we have a round of applause, please? Second speaker, Devarth Tandon. Third speaker, Krishna. And fourth speaker, Adit Joshi. Opposing the motion is the Calcutta's High School, Kolkata, represented by principal speaker, Antariksh Mondal. Please be a little more warm and welcoming to our visitors. Second speaker, Neil Joseph Chakraborty. Third speaker, Adrish Hussain. And fourth speaker, Ronak Bose. Welcome all, and may the best guy team win. Rules of the debate, and I'm sure that you are very aware. I'm sure you're in all kinds of debating committees and whatever have you. But nonetheless, formally, one has to tell you the rules or read out the rules to you, in my case. Each team shall be represented by one principal speaker and two supporting speakers. The fourth speaker shall function in the role of a reserve speaker. The two principal speakers shall be allowed 5, which is 4 plus 1 minutes each to put forward their argument. A warning bell will ring 1 minute before the time is up. The final bell shall be rung when the speaker's time is up. The two speakers from each side will be given 4, which is 3 plus 1 minutes to speak. They will, however, take no part in the summing up. They can only help the main speaker by giving the speaker points to use in the summing up. After all the speakers have presented their arguments, the principal speaker of each team shall be given 4 minutes, which is 3 plus 1, to sum up the arguments of the team. The principal speaker of the opposition shall sum up first. At the end of each speech, except the summing up speeches, a period of 2 minutes shall be allotted to each speaker for rebuttal. That is, to answer questions by members of the opposing team. The questions shall be asked by the show of hands, which shall be addressed by the chairperson, who is myself. The question must be confined to the substance of the speech that immediately precedes each rebuttal process. A maximum of 2 questions may be asked for each rebuttal. Cross-questioning shall not be permitted. Please make note, cross-questioning shall not be permitted. Only the time taken to answer the question shall be taken into account. The questions themselves should not be included in the 2 minutes allotted for rebuttal. All right? So no question to be read out first and then question asked. Since marks shall be provided for the questions asked by the opposing speakers, the quality of the questions posed shall be taken into account. All the questions must be addressed by the show of hands. The fourth speaker of each team will put forward additional arguments upon the conclusion of the overall summing up. This shall be for 2 minutes, 1 plus 1. A warning bell will be rung 1 minute before the time is up for each speaker. The final bell shall be rung when the time is up. Speakers shall be permitted the use of reference or prompt cards and may refer to notes. However, continuous reading shall be penalized. Exceeding the time limit may be penalized. Marks shall be allotted for the following. Judges, please note. Content, 25 points. Delivery, 5 points. Refutation, 10 points. Summing up the opening speech, 10 points. overall impression of the team, 10 points. Now, are we all ready? Boys, all right. It's always better not to read from a paper or from prompt cards. It's always a smarter way to know what you want to say, right? So, all the very best for my visitors. Welcome, welcome, welcome all the way from Kolkata. And your march is absolutely superlative in this whole wide world. So, and boys Lamat near Lucknow, very much the host schools. I hope that we all have a very, very fruitful debate. And I will once again repeat the topic. It is justifiable to force population control measures in overpopulated regions. May I now request the principal speaker of the before I do this, may I know your name, child? Samar. Manasvi. All right. We have Manasvi as our timekeeper. Can we have a round of applause for this young man? Because he's going to be taking care of the time. And, of course, way back when we used to have that kind of a clock thingy, and that you went buzz on that. So how are we going to ring the bell? Please make sure that it's heard. Right? You're the bell keepers here. Who's the bell keeper? Who's the bell keeper? Right? May I have your name? Bell keeper? Bell keeper.
The bell is coming.
Ah, the bell is coming. All right. So the bell is on its way. So may I then, in the meantime, start? There is the ting-ting bell. Thank you so much. All right. Once again, may I request the principal speaker of the proposition, Mr. Vinayak Tandon, to present his views.
I'm audible? Perfect. Ladies and gentlemen, I'm fortunate enough to be a part of a campus that is 830 acres big. But unfortunately, this hall cannot be expanded any further. Today, the world is suffering from the same problem, the idea of overpopulation. If I look at the back, the boys in khakis sitting, my friends are in a place which is more densely populated rather than the boys who are sitting right here. Unfortunately, if more boys decide to skip their class and come at the back, we can add only so many chairs till some of them have to go out. The same issue is going on with the world, that is overpopulation. My name is Vinayak Tandon and I serve as the principal speaker, but before moving on to my arguments, let me just describe why the debate exists. Overpopulation as a thing was not a problem when we used to live in a time where we did not have cell phones and all of us were peaceful and in glory. The problem started arising when there was a scarcity of resources, when the number of people who are using those resources exceeded the number of people who can. Moving on, when we talk about the topic, it is something that we should understand that the words of this topic make much of the debate. To define some of them, what is justifiable? Something that is plausible or reasonable. Justifiable does not mean something that is implementative or something that needs to be done in a specific scenario, but something that could be talked about as a concept because a problem exists. What is force? Force is nothing but compulsion. The idea of force exists on whether the terms on or by. Does a government force something to do? Does a government force something on us? That is the government forcing something on us. Do we abide by this? That is the population abiding by that force. The topic here reads that we force population control measures on the people, but it does not read that the population abides by those measures. Moving on, what is the idea of regions? A region is different from a country, and a country cannot be generalized to have been overpopulated just because a specific region is. In India, if a metropolitan city like Delhi or Mumbai is overpopulated and there's a scarcity of resources, we cannot claim that the whole of India is uninhabitable. Moving on to the burden of proof. The burden of proof of the side proposition today is to prove that as a population, we have reached at a level where the idea of control is important. And note the word control. Control means to prevent something from expanding further rather than reducing something which already exists. What the side proposition today will propose is not reducing the population which already is there, but rather controlling the amount. Moving on, today we have to prove how the right to life of the masses supersedes the right to personal will of a specific person. But rather, the burden of opposition today is to prove that in this world that we live in, the population is so evenly divided, the resources are so nicely divided amongst the people that overpopulation as a concept does not exist. Moving on to my arguments. Ladies and gentlemen, when we talk about something which is justifiable versus something that is implementative, if a medical procedure is developed in a country, the problem is something that is first identified rather than the instruments that we'll use to solve that problem. The same way, something that we acknowledge as a problem is discussing the justifiability of it rather than implementing measures against that. And moving on to the idea of forceful. In a country, we have a preconceived notion in society that idea of forceful, something against the people, is something brutal to the people. But as a society, we live in a place where laws are something that are already forceful to us because of a problem that is established. Murder is a problem, therefore a forceful law against that murder is something that we as a society accept. But overpopulation is a problem that we need to establish so that forcefulness against it in the form of laws, in the form of measures that are not violent and threatening can be established. Moving on to the idea of how exactly something like this works. When we talk about a region versus a country, establishing measures in a region is different than generalizing a whole country to be vacated or to be shifted just cause overpopulation exists in a specific place. My second and third speaker will describe my arguments further and will deconstruct the side opposition. Thank you so much.
The judges may note that the speaker exceeded his time limit by 5 seconds.
May I now request the principal speaker of the opposition? Sorry, oops. Can we, sorry, we open it out for rebuttals? All right.
Hello. Yes. So you mentioned that laws are already forceful in a country, but laws are also constitutional. And to introduce laws about population control measures which are forceful have been proven to be unconstitutional across many countries. So how do you justify your statement in that regard?
As a nation, how do we decide the constitutionality of a law? The idea is something that is not brutal, or idea is something that does not exactly tend to the point that we kill someone for the sole sake of it being established by the law. When we talk about a population control measure, when we talk about a law that is part of something which is not brutal, but rather something which is done to control a problem. A theft is a problem. A murder is a problem. A thing that is causing destruction to the society is a problem which can be controlled. The same way, when we talk about the forcing of those laws, it already exists. Just the fact that as a society we have accepted that because it is wrong, the forcefulness against it is correct. The same way, identifying overpopulation as the problem and thereby the need to forcefully reduce that population, or rather control it, I'm so sorry, control that population is something that is justifiable.
One more question, please.
Sir, thank you for your speech. In your speech, you mentioned about the right to life. I have a question. Sir, how can you address the difference between a fundamental right and a law, because considering that laws are open to changes considering special situations in special regions, but whereas fundamental rights are actually fixed as the basic principles of the Constitution of India.
Sir, to answer that, firstly, there's a very inherent difference between what's it a basic right and what has been established as time went on. Right to life is the most basic right that we ever had. Right to privacy is something that was established as time went on. When we talk about the difference versus laws and rights, a law is there so that the right of a person can be protected. The right to life being the most basic one out of them all. But when a situation like overpopulations threatens that right to life because of scarcity of resources, because of things not being evenly distributed, because of lack of land to live in a specific region, laws need to be made to protect that exact right, that is right to life. Thank you.
And thank you very much. May I now invite the principal speaker of the opposition, Antariksh Mondal, to present his views.
Today, I stand here before the audience to say that what the proposition has done as of now is just advocated the violation of the humanitarian rights under Universal Declaration of Human Rights. Good morning to one and all present here. I am Antariksh Mondal, representing Calcutta Boys School. I am the principal speaker of the opposition, and today I stand strongly against the motion under the hammer. Now, let's define this very intriguing topic at hand by elaborating some key terms, which I'm sure you have all understood that the side proposition has twisted into their own convenience. But we will not do that. We will only deliver facts. We won't even salt or pepper them to make them palatable. But I will go backwards in this regard. What is overpopulation? Overpopulation is the condition of being populated with large numbers. Now, a point of clarification here for both the proposition and the audience is that it is not only caused by the birth of the younger generations, but also the life expectancy of the older generation has increased due to improved healthcare facilities. And that is also a main cause of overpopulation. Now, coming to another keyword, population control measures. It is the policy of attempting to limit the growth in numbers of a population by different processes. Here also I will have a point of clarification. There are two types of population control measures. One is an extremist type and one is a mild type. The extremist type has permanent and irreversible consequences, and the mild types do not have permanent or irreversible consequences. Now, what does population control measures really entail? It consists of extreme measures, as I mentioned, such as sterilization, chemical castration, and other extreme means. But it also consists of processes such as contraceptives, physical barriers, and even government policies such as increasing the legal age of marriage. There are also some extremist outlines of this, as will be stated by my second and the third speaker. The one-child policy of China and the two-child policy of India, to be exact. And now I come to the word which is the cause of the most disambiguity in this topic, the word force. Force is making someone do something without their will. What the proposition here is advocating is the absence of consent. Now I bring up the question to the audience. Is this really want in this world? Does the society not allow the acceptance of consent? Now lastly, I would want to define the term justifiable. As side proposition mentioned, justifiable refers to something that can be reasoned and defended. But what side proposition twisted is that it also requires to have a practical basis. Now, ladies and gentlemen, let me give you a simple example. A concept, as they mentioned, is not to be implementable. But tell me, can a concept of having magical wands in our pockets be theorized upon in this world? No, because it has no practical basis. Also, now we come to the crux of the matter. What are the cons of overpopulation? The cons of overpopulation are unemployment, depletion of resources, and what does that all direct us to? It directs us to economic degradation. And now we must ask the very fundamental question, which is often ignored. Why do we need economic growth in a country or a nation or in a region? It is because we need to look after the welfare of the citizens. Economic growth is needed to give access to the citizens to a dignified life. Now tell me, if the end goal of economic growth is to a life of dignity being accessible to each and every citizen of this world, how can it be achieved by means so brutal and disgustingly insulting to human dignity itself as forced population control? Now, there is no way to deny the correlation between poverty and overpopulation. But why? Let us understand this also with a very simple example. Let us consider two families, family 1 and family 2, and both have the same economical status. But family 1 has 2 children, family 2 has 6 children. Now, ladies and gentlemen, tell me which of those families' children will be more deprived of nutrition, education, and economic support as a whole. Now, I think you understand what I'm getting at here. Also, this is where educational awareness comes into play. The government must employ economic funds to raise educational awareness programs to make aware the poverty-stricken and the illiterate population of our world as well. Because overpopulation as a problem should be known by each and every citizen, and it should come out of our heart to stop and prevent that problem. And now lastly, I would like to conclude by stating that it is the burden of the proposition here to cite, and we will be generous here really, at least one example where forcing population control measures in history actually worked for our own benefit and provided us with some substantial results. My second and third speaker will elaborate on my key points. Thank you.
Judges may note that the speaker exceeded his time limit by 8 seconds.
And the floor is open for the opposition, proposition for rebuttal.
So you mentioned about how poverty and lack of resources is also correlated to overpopulation, and then went on to mention economic growth. But what the side proposition, if according to our paradigm we reduce overpopulation, then doesn't that benefit your case as well by reducing poverty, by giving more resources, thereby contradicting your stance because it works in our favor?
With due permission of the chair, I would like to answer. Sir, we are not advocating against controlling of overpopulation or reducing overpopulation. We also want that. As human beings, it is our right to feel safe in this world. But then understand what we are actually advocating for is consent. Each and every argument should be consensual. Why should the government force upon the citizens upon its citizens the need to not have children or other such population or controlling population measures? Why can't it be consensual? I think that answers your question.
Please.
Also, you mentioned about a person's right to live. But don't you think this right to live is the most basic human right, and it would take precedence over every other right? A right is exercised as long as it does not harm others. And if someone's right is harming my most basic right to live, would that not be an offense against my right?
With due permission of the chair, I would like to answer. Sir, how can you justify that someone's right to live is harming others, or someone's right to live is harmed by others living itself? If one person living harms the right to live of another person, then that another person's right to live is also harming that person's right to living, because you're advocating for that person's right to live not be to be redundant. Thank you. I think that answers your question.
Thank you very much. May I now invite the second speaker of the proposition, Devarth Tandon.
Am I audible? All right, starting in 3, 2, 1. The capital city of Ireland is facing a massive overpopulation crisis. its population is doubling every year. Greetings to all members of the House present here. The topic under fire today is, it is justifiable to force population control measures in overpopulated regions. And I, as the second speaker of side proposition, stand here vehemently proposing the motion. At the very onset of my speech, I'd like to make a clarification, perhaps the biggest clarification so far in the debate. The concept of free will. Ladies and gentlemen, understand, when we talk about rights given to a person, when we talk about the free will given to a person, no right is ever absolute in nature. For example, I have the right of freedom of movement. I can swing my fist. It does not mean while swinging my fist, I have the right to hit someone else, which hinders their right. And that is what we are talking about today. Opposition comes up and talks about the UDHR, that is the Universal Declaration of Human Rights. Ladies and gentlemen, it is very important for us to understand the UDHR is a non-enforceable, non-binding document. No government in the world is forced, no government in the world is mandated to follow the UDHR, which is perhaps the reason why we are having the problem, which is perhaps why our side of the case has more value, simply because such important documents not being forced, not being enforceable, has further led to this problem. Moving on. Again, if we talk about the rights given to a person, for example, talk about the right of freedom of speech. I have the right of freedom of speech. It does not mean I can say bad things about my worthy opponents here. That is slander. I have the right of freedom of speech. It does not mean I can say completely seditious things against the government. The Enforcement Directorate will pick me up and put me in jail if I do that. Moving on to our next constructive. We need to understand how overpopulation as a concept is the problem. As our principal speaker mentioned, we as a society see things such as kidnapping, murder, extortion, blackmail, rape, molestation as problems. Why don't we see overpopulation as a problem? If we consider the side opposition's model of having mild control measures, well, I'd like to give them an example. In the year 2000, India had a population of 1 billion. The government decided to implement these mild measures on the population. And where did that lead us? Where did that amazing idea lead us? The population is now 1.5 billion. In a span of 25 years, the population increased by 500 million of such a big nation simply because population control measures were not forced. Moving on to our next constructive. As I was talking about identifying overpopulation as a problem, ladies and gentlemen, let's consider this. Let's consider an example of a slum in Mumbai, where there are thousands of people living in a very small, very narrow area. They don't have economic access, they don't have sanitary access, they don't have the basic rights, the basic essential conditions which would make them want to live further. Ladies and gentlemen, the very concept of overpopulation is a detriment to our society. The earth only has limited resources. The earth only has limited space. If we go on and if we continue not putting a restriction, not forcing a restriction on overpopulation, there will come a time when the earth will completely get exhausted and no person on earth will have enough for their needs. With that being said, I rest my case and I'm very proud to propose. Thank you so much.
The judges may note that the speaker was well within his time limit.
Rebuttal, please. Yes, please.
Sir, you gave the example of these mild measures not being effective. However, in Kerala and Tamil Nadu, where the government's focused on literacy, especially on women literacy, the birth rates have decreased and they have seen to combat overpopulation in that sense. So how do you justify your statement in that regard?
Okay, thank you, Speaker, for your question. Speaker, the topic pertains to control measures in overpopulated regions. You gave a very cherry-picked and a very niche. All right, Speaker, can you repeat your question for the benefit of the judge, please?
So you mentioned that these mild measures have not been effective. However, in Kerala and Tamil Nadu, where they focused on literacy, especially on literacy in women, the population overpopulation problem has decreased and it has proven to be effective. So how do you justify your statement in that regard?
Before you start, I would request the august audience, please listen in very carefully because they are on a time scape here and we cannot keep on repeating questions. Please, henceforth, restrict yourself to listen to the questions very carefully so that time may be saved. Thank you so much. Please carry on.
Thank you, Speaker, for your question. Speaker, you know what? For a moment, let's consider that I agree with you. In the state of Tamil Nadu and Kerala, I believe you mentioned, these mild measures, so-called mild measures, have been effective. For every single cherry-picked example of a Tamil Nadu, there will be 10 examples where these measures will never ever be effective, which is why the imposition of forced population control measures becomes relevant in the first place. Thank you so much. I hope that answers your question.
Any other question? No, you can't ask this. You can't do cross questioning. Any other member? Separate question, fine.
So you mentioned in your speech that forcing population control measures would work and would prove to be effective. How do you plan to implement forcing population control measures while not violating the legal rights of the individual and without adverse effects on their physical and mental health and without causing economic degradation in the future?
Speaker, the ambit of the debate is about justifiability of these measures. Our principal speaker already elaborated the difference between justifiability and implementability. So I guess if you were paying attention to his speech, you would already know the answer to your question. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much. May I please invite the second speaker of the opposition, Neil Joseph Chakraborty.
Hello, am I audible? Yes. Good morning, esteemed judges and members of the House. My previous speakers already defined the motion and how unethical the practice of actually forcing population control measures actually is and what it entails. First of all, I would like to highlight that how population control measures cannot actually be implemented in a country like India because they're actually illegal, because the proposition loves talking about laws and right to life so much. So Article 21, right to freedom of life and personal liberty is guaranteed by the Indian Constitution. However, implementing forceful population control measures denies the individual the right to give consent, and hence this right is violated. Then comes the right to privacy, which also comes under Article 21. The person, the individual, loses the right to control decisions about the own autonomy of its own body, and hence right to privacy is also violated. Right to health. If these forceful population control measures are not implemented carefully, it could lead to adverse health effect on the general masses where it is implemented, and hence right to health would also be violated. And this was seen during the emergency, where after the emergency there was a health crisis in India. So these laws actually cannot be implemented because they violate the fundamental structure and the fundamental rights which are enshrined in our constitution, and they cannot be introduced. So the law aspect of the argument of the proposition stands baseless. Now the opposition talked about the UDHR, Universal Declaration of Human Rights, being non-binding. And yes, I agree that they are non-binding, but what I would like to highlight that 193 member countries of the United Nations have highlighted their principles and shown that they believe in these principles that are stated in the UDHR. And I would also like to highlight how forceful population measures violate articles of the UDHR. Article 5, right to be free from torture and cruel, inhuman and degrading treatment. Article 16, right to found a family. Article 10, right to information and consent. Also Article 25, Article 2, I could go on and on and on. Secondly, I would like to highlight that what are the actual problems that arise due to forceful population control measures. First of all, if not implemented correctly, adverse health issues may arise, such as heavy menstrual bleeding, severe abdominal and back pain, which lasts for years even after the procedure is completed. This would in turn lead to further reinvestment costs of healthcare. For example, the population argued that overpopulation is causing economic degradation. If forceful population measures are implemented and a healthcare crisis arises, the money that you're gaining, that is again being reinvested into healthcare. So you're back to square one. And I would also like to highlight that this was the case after the emergency in India, where there was a healthcare crisis and a lot of funds had to be transported into healthcare. The second problem is the demographics. Let's just take the case study of Japan. They have a low birth rate, but they have the death rate remains the same. So the difference in demographics, there is a large old population and a low youth population. This leads to reduction in the workforce and hence degrading the economy. Japan is heading into a recession. So these are the problems that would actually arise. And they mentioned that we are cherry picking examples of how the mild measures don't actually work. I would like to point out how their extremist measures work. China's one-child policy. From 1917 to 2015, China had adopted a one-child policy. However, this policy gave rise to a number of secret babies which were not registered under the government. So what actually was the problem was, these babies were born in secret and they had no legal identity. So when they were trying to get education, when they were trying to get married, when they were trying to obtain social welfare benefits, they could not do that. And the societal pressure was also from the family because they had to hide these children. So on paper, the population of China is decreasing. However, the secret population that is in turn arising leads to more problems in their country. And according to an NPR report, this population of this, the number of secret population was esteemed to be around 1 or 2 million. Thank you.
Judges may note that the speaker was well within his time limit.
Right. Rebuttal, please.
Thank you, Speaker, for your speech. Speaker, in the entirety of your speech, you used the words forceful and you confused it with the word threatening. Those words are not interchangeable. There are forceful population control measures which are not threatening, which are non-violent. Please provide justification.
Could you repeat your question in a more concise manner?
My quite simple question to you is, you used the word forceful and you confused it with the word threatening or violent. There are population control measures which are neither threatening nor they are violent, which can be forced. How do you justify?
So first of all, I would like to highlight that there are population control measures which are forceful. First of all, I highlighted what constitutional rights are violated when the consent is or not obtained. No matter how mild the population control measure is, if the individual does not give its consent, he does not have the right to go through that measure. And I also highlighted the problems in the past that have occurred due to these extremist measures being adopted with China's one-child policy and forced sterilization during the emergency. So this is what I was actually trying to highlight. I hope that answers your question.
Thank you. Can we have another question if you have? Yes, Vinayak.
So you mentioned in your speech the example of Japan, but do you realize that Tokyo itself is in a state where they are asking its citizens to leave because of the problem of overpopulation, and thereby measures to actually reduce it are quite justifiable in a place if we even leave the part of implementation, because according to your stance itself, it is burdening the city and thereby slowing its growth.
So first of all, I would like to highlight that Tokyo is not all of Japan. First of all, this is the main concept. And if they're asking people to move out of Tokyo, so what I would like to highlight, the term asking. They're asking for the consent of the people. So in no way it is justified to force these measures on. We are also against overpopulation. We know that overpopulation comes with its problems in turn, and we also want to solve the problem. But what we are already asking for is that the consent of the individual must be taken. It should be done in the right way and it should not be forced upon the individual by the state. I hope that answers your question.
Thank you very much. We still have time. Any other question? Okay. Now I would like to invite the third speaker of the proposition, Krishna.
Am I audible? I'll start in 3, 2, 1. Members of the House, before moving on to my constructives and the problems with their case, let us first lay down certain basics. We have already recognized that overpopulation is a persistent problem. something that has been said by side proposition and something that has been acknowledged by side opposition. So the existence of the problem, the threat of the problem has already been recognized. Now let's move on to what we're actually proposing. Members of the House, throughout the entirety of the case, side opposition has been giving us the most extreme, most polarized examples. We are not saying implemented the way China did. We are not saying implemented the way it was implemented during the emergency. No. All we are saying is that an implementation is necessary. This force is necessary to ensure a future of the people. Members of the House, I am a student of law and I know how laws work, so I will shed light on same. No right is absolute. Every single right of a person has to be exercised to a limit until it does not plague onto the right of others. Throughout the case, side opposition has been given this a fundamentally superior status to free will. Members of the House, every single person, their free will is contained at every single moment. Right now, my free will asks me to go down, to cuss at them, to do whatever, but these are laws. These are laws that are inhibiting my actions. These are laws that are inhibiting my consent, and yet they are legal and they are necessary for a society to thrive. Members of the House, for the very establishment of a society, there were these forceful measures, else it would be an anarchy. This is the fundamental problem that side opposition fails to realize. An advice can never bear the same value as force. An advice is just a recommendation, and we've already given you a very big, a major example of what that does. 1947, a population census. We have 700 million people in the country. 53 years later, 2000, we have 1 billion. Government recognizes that there is a stringent problem. Government recognizes that, oh, we're running out of resources to feed our people with. So let's educate them. Let's give them an option. Let's advise them. And members of the House, see where we are today. We are the most overpopulated country. In the last 20 years, the increase in population has been more than that of the last 200 years. Do you see the fundamental problem? It is that an advice simply does not work. And let's talk about prioritizing rights over one another. Members of the House, a right to live is the most fundamental right for any other right to exist. This has already been established. For example, I as a person haven't eaten for days. I don't have the money that the privileged strata does. One day we are headed to a situation where the capitalists, the majoritarians will have enough money to feed themselves. But let's talk about the stakeholders who will be impacted the worst. The people below the poverty line. Right now, I am concerned because I'm going to starve to death tonight. Now tell me, what would my primary concern be? Me making it through the night, or someone else's right to action? Members of the House, human philosophy is based on the very principle that the very basic right of existence always supersedes the right to action. That is why every single fundamental right is under certain under restrictions posed by law, by due procedures established by law, one that we are advocating. In fact, side opposition in their case mentioned how education can be utilized. Members of the House, even though we have established that education simply has not worked for most of the cases, and even if certain regions are contained, the problem continues to grow until we hit a point of saturation, a point of no return, from where it is nothing but doom for humanity. But what we can instead do is impose measures. Even if you're imposing education, you'll have to force a person to listen. You'll have to force. And in the end, we establish our burden that one has to be forced in order to heed to the problem. And that is the only way the problem can ever be solved. Thank you. I'm beyond proud to propose.
Judges may note that the speaker exceeded his time limit by 15 seconds.
Please.
Would I ask you the permission?
Absolutely.
So you constantly mention the right to life, right to live, etc. But one of the main aspects of such fundamental rights is the concept of consent. So without consent, there cannot be a proper right to life. And you talked. How do you justify your statement in that regard?
Ladies and gentlemen, again, let's come to a very fundamental problem of the case so far. It is about assertions that are not backed by any reasoning. Any argument has to be structured in a format where I give a conclusion and then I back it up with a premise. Ladies and gentlemen, what side opposition did was a clear example of a fallacy, and I'll clarify how. Right to consent is an integral part, but right to concept of whom? If you ask me if I want to live, yes. If you ask me if I want to live 10 years later, if I want to feed myself 10 years later, definitely yes. Members of the House, right to consent exists, but right to live every single time supersedes the same. For example, I consent to not giving food to anyone in the world, but this, in my consent, my free will is now superseding someone else's right, and their rights are being plagued. They are suffering, and law will always heed these people over an individual's right to action. This is the very fundamental philosophy behind every single law in place in our country and in the world alike. I hope that answers your question, sir.
Yes, please.
Thank you, sir, for your speech. Sir, when you advocate for forced population control measures, could you please highlight at least one instance wherein such forced measures have been implemented successfully and ethically, yet had fruitful results?
All right, sir. Thank you for your question. So the debate today does not revolve around feasibility. It revolves around would an action be justifiable? Here we have to consider, in case we were able to devise this method, once we put it to place, would it be justifiable in order to do that? To that, we have to establish the problem of overpopulation, which side proposition has done. We have to establish that we don't have any other means. That side proposition has already done. You talk about the examples of China, you talk about the examples of emergency. I'll give you better examples. The country of Suriname was going through a population crisis, a population boom. Every single person had a ratio of per child to family was touching the number of 5. What the government did was force not by extremist violent measures that side opposition thinks, rather by mild measures like containment, like incentives and civil punitives. I hope that answers your question, sir.
Thank you very much. May I now invite the third speaker of the opposition, Adrish Hossain.
I think I'm audible to everyone present in this hall. Starting in the self count of 1, 2, 3. Ladies and gentlemen, just because you can do something doesn't mean you always will do something. Understand that today I can just bluff like my opponents, but I won't do that, as I am rational at the end of the day. Now, my opponents mentioned about force. It is the feeling of compulsion. But when you mention compulsion, you need to specify, is it with consent? No, consent is necessary. Now, you talk about overpopulation as a concept which doesn't exist. You talked about that being our ideology. Now understand that we as rational individuals don't support overpopulation, but we actually stand against the fact that we are implementing forced measures to actually tackle that kind of a situation. The second speaker of the opposition contradicted his team's own statement on the liberty over the basic rights of an individual in our nation. Now understand, you mentioned about rights being tangible, but under the Keshavananda Bharati versus the Union of India lawsuit, the Supreme Court actually gave a verdict that the fundamental rights are the basic principles and pillars of the Constitution and cannot be altered under any circumstances. Ladies and gentlemen, understand that any new initiative which has to be implemented has to be done in accordance with the already existing frameworks and has to be abided by the normal regulations and international standards. Now, under the Article 7 and 8 of the Rome Statute, any actions of forced population control against any kind of minority or group in any region are actually considered to be crimes against humanity and have been given the same status as war crimes. The nations are actually sparking atrocities in their own country without engaging in active conflict. Hence, states can be held accountable in the International Court of Justice for such flagrant violations of customary international humanitarian law. Indeed, the opposition have proven themselves. They have proven themselves guilty of crimes against humanity. Understand, ladies and gentlemen, in 2013, the UN Special or Rapporteur Juan Mendes actually published a UN-backed report. He mentioned that often such measures included involuntary, intrusive, and irreversible practices, medical practices in nature, which actually have a therapeutic impact on the individual, both psychological, economic, and in various cases also social. Now, coming to my next point, I would like to specify about a lawsuit case again. The 2016 Ivy versus Bolivia lawsuit at the Inter-American Courts of Bolivian Hospital was actually sterilized without her consent. Now, my opposition, what would you do if such a same situation happens with your own mothers and sisters or someone you love? Now, considering a different dimension to this issue, we know that according to the globally ratified Genocide Convention, any acts of imposing measures to intend to prevent the births within a particular group is an act of genocide, is an illegal act of genocide against them. You need to understand how the government is going to implement them, not the opposition. Our opposition has no hand in the implementation. When the governments implement these measures or initiatives, they are guided by secret motives which are harmful towards various ethnic minorities by suppressing those who are already marginalized and are already in trouble. The government is actually having a prejudice and stigma over these marginalized and suppressed communities. This is what China is doing to the Muslims in Uyghur. This is what has been done to the Kurds and will be done to the Kurds. This is what will be happening to the ethnic minorities in India and everyone ever born. This is nothing but state-sponsored atrocities. Understand that we as humans need to find alternatives, be it any kind of population control methods, be it medical, be it biological, be it social, be it educational, or be it based on awareness. It must be consented. It requires consent because no consent actually is illegal under international law. So now my opponents who are actually designated as Leo, with their irrational stance, I would like to specify that with your irrational stance, you are not Leo. You are just a mere weeping cat. Thank you.
The judges may note that the speaker was well within his time limit.
Yes, please.
Thank you, Speaker, for your emotional speech. My simple question to you is, do you think education is a viable population control measure? If yes, how do you plan on educating every person in every overpopulated region, if not forcefully?
Ladies and gentlemen, first of all, understand every change we wish to see in our society actually comes within ourselves first, initially. Every change we wish to see in our society is actually coming from the foundation of every single individual. Now, when we talk about education, understand that for education, consent is a secondary factor. For education, it is the interest and intent of the individual to actually adapt to the changing dynamics. Now, education cannot be forced. If education is forced, then that is not knowledge, that is propaganda. I think that answers your question.
Do we have another question? Please.
So throughout your case, you have been talking about the absolute nature of laws. So are there or are there not any such procedures by which these fundamental rights can be inhibited?
Sir, that was a very good attempt to actually make me find loopholes in my very own speech. But I would like to specify that, as I specified in my speech as well, the Keshavananda Bharati versus the Union of India lawsuit was actually given a verdict by the Supreme Court of India. It actually mentioned that according to the 24th Amendment Act, amendments can be brought in laws. But as fundamental principles are the basic pillars, the basic frameworks of the Constitution, amendments cannot be brought into that. They remain the same and intangible under every situation.
Thank you very much. I would now like to invite the principal speaker of the side opposition, Antariksh Mondal, to sum up the team's arguments.
Good morning once again, members of the House. Now, let me tell you today, the side proposition's arguments have been totally based on speculation. And let me tell you why, ladies and gentlemen. First of all, the side proposition has totally failed to address my last question as the principal speaker of side opposition. It was that, can they cite at least one example in history where forcing population control measures ethically have ever provided us with fruitful results? They have not stated that as of yet. Also, side opposition here has provided numerous case studies and facts catering to our stance. What side proposition has done is repeated its very few constructives because they themselves know that their stance is not justified at all. Also, I would like to bring up some contradictions in their motion. Contradicting their first speaker, they mentioned that the concept of justifiable does not mean it is implementable. It does not have to be implementable. It can just be thought of as a concept. Well, then the third speaker went on to prove that how it should be implemented on the world. Okay. Also, they have mentioned that non-forcing population control measures cannot work. Okay. Does forcing population control measures work? They haven't been again able to provide any case studies or valid arguments that side opposition has provided in plenty. Also, understand, ladies and gentlemen, that actions, either good or bad, has consequences, and the implementation should be handled in that manner. I would also like to point out to side proposition that if you state your arguments have a premise and ours don't, as stated by the third speaker of the side proposition, it does not bend the truth. Okay? Your word is not absolute. Also, the third speaker or the second speaker, I really forgetting here, but some of them mentioned the word incentive. Now, this word already contradicts their own stance. The government providing an incentive automatically means that it is not forced. The government is providing either some monetary benefits or some social benefits to those citizens to themselves keep the population under control. For example, I can't just tell you, here, take my money, but you do have to do this. No, the money is, the force is not the driving factor here, ladies and gentlemen. The money is the driving factor. The incentive is the driving factor. Also, they have repeated their own few constructives without any case studies. Now, ladies and gentlemen, this is a debate. Case studies is one of the most important parts of the debate. There is a reason that this stance has not been implemented in the world as of now. It has been brought up many times in United Nations and in also our own Indian Lok Sabha, but it has been rejected many times. We have many YouTube videos catering to this. I would like side proposition to go search them up on YouTube. Also, I would like to put up the question to the audience now. Will you believe a side whose only arguments is speculation and with very few facts? Or would you believe a side who has provided arguments specifically catering to our stance and provided facts with a premise which side proposition have not been able to do at all today? Thank you. With this, I do rest my case, but definitely not my stance.
Judges may note that the speaker was well within his time limit.
May I now invite the principal speaker of the side proposition, Vinayak Tandon, to sum up the team's arguments.
I'm audible? I'm audible? Platymenthus, astelmenthus, coelentrata, tinophora, porifera, chordata, mens rea, actus rea, code, jury. Crimes against humanity, customary international law, international code of human rights, statutes, atrocities, etc. Ladies and gentlemen, do you know what these terms have in common? Jargon which does not make sense to the topic at hand. Today, the side proposition came up here and gave you constructives, while the side opposition came up here and tried to drive a parallel debate. Today, I will state a fact to you. In 1947, I met Mahatma Gandhi and he told me that AI will take over the world in 2030. You might not believe it, but I do. Do you know why? Because I choose to believe that. And what is the side opposition doing? Exactly that. When we talk about the idea of justified, they themselves admitted it is something that can be reasoned with. Would a thing like artificial intelligence taking over the world in 1950 be justified? No, it cannot, because we cannot even reason with it. But today we acknowledge that problem, and therefore it is justified to reason with it. The fact that the side opposition accepts that it is a problem is justified enough to be reasoned with it. It is justified enough to find solutions for it. Moving on, they tried to turn the whole debate into a parallel debate about how the consent and constitution and different articles apply. I could give you a very specific example of in how India itself, it was illegal to suicide if even I want to consent that I want to kill myself till a few years ago, being the classic example of how no right is completely absolute. Moving on, we talked about the idea of Kerala and China to give two very cherry-picked examples, one which states that the solution works and one which states that the solution does not. When we talk about even the idea of China and the policy they had, the whole issue that the side proposition first said in their speech was exactly what a region versus a country is. China itself is a place which was populated near the Shanghai and the coastline, which was the exact issue of overpopulation. But is China as a whole, was that a country that was overpopulated, encompassing all the area that it constitutes? No. When we talk about population control measures, we talk about it in a specific region. Moving on, when we actually talk about the idea of a fundamental right or a fundamental principle, they used those terms interchangeably and did not care to elaborate on that. When we talk about forceful population control measures, we are talking about governments forcing population control measures to be introduced. There's a very basic difference. The school can force me to give an exam. Do I sit there and write the exam? That's up to me. My parents can force me to eat something, but do I not vomit it out later? The idea remaining that a government can force population control measures, but the people, do they have to abide by that? That's difference. The idea of forceful population control measures is a step to acknowledge a problem and then try to reduce it. The very fact that we are debating about it, the very fact that this is something no one would have imagined in the Mughal era, is reason enough that it is justified. It is reason enough that it can be reasoned with. Moving on, when we talk about how they gave the example of Tokyo, which is again a very picked example, and went on to mention Tokyo is not all of Japan. Exactly side opposition. Tokyo is a region of Japan which needs that measure because all of Japan is fine. We are not asking you a polarized debate. Forceful population control is done. Forceful population control is not done. We kill everyone. We don't kill everyone. That is how the side opposition is leading the debate. The idea of normal measures in a specific place in order to curb a crisis which will later lead on to something more massive is exactly what the side proposition is advocating for. Thank you so much. And with that, I'm very, very proud to propose.
Judges may note that the speaker exceeded his time limit by 4 seconds.
I would now like to invite the fourth speaker of the proposition, Adit Joshi, to please give his views. Just a minute, excuse me. I would, really sorry to interrupt. Adit, can you please sit for a moment? Can you please sit for a moment? All right. Before we do our final closing fourth speaker round, this is a very wonderful, beautiful setting that we're sitting at, and the judges will be having to make their results out. So they will be leaving the area. Before that, we would like to invite on stage the judges, Dr. Surabhi Modi, Le Martinet Boys College would like to give a token of appreciation to you. Dr. Surabhi Modi and Mr. Gary Everett. Wonderful hospitality. Thank you so much, Dr. Modi. Now may I invite on the stage Dr. Mitali Tiwari. Thank you so much, Craig Kerr. Thank you so much for being here, Dr. Tiwari. Thank you so much. Dr. Jaydeep Chandra. Please maybe have a round of applause for the judges. Wonderful to be up on your stage once again after so many years. Dr. Chandra. Thank you, Mr. Craig Kerr. Thank you so much,
But
Mr.
sir,
Everett.
we need sir to stay because we're not done yet. Since Dr. Mala Mehra has given us the spice of life here during the debate, we also have one to present to her. And of course, ma'am, one of your favorites, this is lemongrass. So we hope that you can have quite a good tea after the program.
Please be seated. And thank you so much, Mr. Everett, for this wonderful surprise that has come our way. And I'm a soup person, so there is my lemongrass for all my soups and stir fries. Thank you so much. And the judges, thank you so very much. And we are looking forward for the results. Thank you so much. Mr. Craig Kerr, thank you so much. And our school captain, thank you so much. Now, I'm sorry to have interrupted you. Adit Joshi, was it? Right. Please.
I'll start my speech in 3, 2, 1. Ladies and gentlemen, before moving on to the topic of the debate, let's just talk about one thing that the principal speaker of side proposition mentioned in his first speech. Why does the debate exist? Ladies and gentlemen, the debate exists because the problem of overpopulation exists. Because the basic reason why we even need to discuss this, the basic reason why this August House is convening at this very moment and discussing, the judges are sitting here, the chairperson is chairing it, the teams are debating it, is because the problem exists and because there must be a solution that must be found for this very problem. In a line of questioning, the members of side opposition presented an argument that that literacy was practiced in Tamil Nadu and it produced preferable results. Ladies and gentlemen, that is the very point we're trying to make here. When we're talking about population control measures are not restricted to castration, to chemical castration, or to any form of extreme measures. They can also be limited to basic education that the government will impose on its people, that the government will will educate the people, and in turn, if the people benefit from it, if the rate of population growth is even reduced to the slightest of percentage, it is considered in our favor and the motion passes. That, ladies and gentlemen, is the idea side proposition was here to encapsulate today. Now, let's talk about a very basic thing. The members of side opposition came up here and talked about case studies and history being the only thing that makes a debate. No, ladies and gentlemen, the basic answer to that question is no. Case building is more important. The only thing side opposition came up here today and played with the facts, presented us facts. But what side proposition did was come up here, present us with facts and a strong case. Why does this debate exist? Why does the very reason we are sitting here and convening exist, why we need to discuss upon this problem that is plaguing our modern world, and is it quote unquote justifiable for us to impose population measures? Now tell me, ladies and gentlemen, take an example of a classroom. Right now, if I'm sitting here in a classroom and I'm the teacher of the classroom and 75 students are sitting right in front of me. If I choose to impart knowledge on them, it is the choice of the students to accept that knowledge or to reject it. But I am enforcing that knowledge onto them. That is the idea we follow. Thank you very much, ladies and gentlemen. I'm very proud to propose.
All right, thank you so much. And now I would like to invite the fourth speaker of the opposition, Ronak Bose, to please come up.
Ladies and gentlemen, as the last speaker of today's debate, let me start with a very famous proverb. Ends do not justify the means. Well, side proposition today has, without even citing a single example, apparently implemented forced population control measures, perhaps leading to population control. But at the cost of what? At the cost of our very rights. Well, good morning to one and all present here. I'm Ronak Bose from side opposition, and today I stand strongly against the motion under the hammer. Well, ladies and gentlemen, side proposition today highlighted the same points over and over again at the pace of a bullet train, thinking that we would apparently not notice. Well, side proposition, I believe, is just like that student who opens his textbook the day before the exam. Instead of taking prerequisites of raising awareness on overpopulation, they start showing their apparent concern once the area is already crowded and overpopulated. Now, ladies and gentlemen, also they mentioned that they will force something and the people will not abide by it. Well, I don't understand what kind of force this actually is. Now, we have been repeatedly asking from the beginning of the debate for at least one case in history where side proposition stance has been proven to be true. However, they just keep ignoring it, definitely owing to their lack of constructives in today's debate. Ladies and gentlemen, it is evident that side proposition is devoid of facts and it is just sharing their hypothetical situations which are in favor of them. Understand, ladies and gentlemen, that anyone can create hypothetical situations to their favor. Let me create an hypothetical situation here. Even I can be sitting at my house with Hitler and plan World War III over a cup of coffee. This is a hypothetical situation. This is not reality. And this exactly proves why side proposition has completely lost today's debate. Ladies and gentlemen, side proposition's delusion is thus proven. And the only thing that I can draw their analogy with is perhaps an eggless omelette. Ladies and gentlemen, I have a small advice for side proposition. Find some arguments before raising your voice. Also, this is a debate, not a speaking competition. Find some arguments, as I mentioned earlier. With that, I rest my case, but most definitely not my stance. Thank you.
Very impassioned, are we? Very nice, and it's good to be passionate. It's good to have an opinion that is good and it's forceful about it. And yes, I think you guys did a very good job. Maybe we maybe hear it out for Vinayak Tandon. Please rise. Devarth Tandon, Krishna, and Adit Joshi proposing the motion. May we also have our guests from Kolkata, Antariksh Modal, Neil Joseph Chakraborty, Adrish Hossain, and Ronak Bose. Can we please have a round of applause for all of these wonderful people? Also for the cameraman up there, for the debating chair, Mr. Craig Kerr, for my buddy here, our timekeeper, please rise, take a bow, and very especially to our principal invitee, the principal of Lamartine Boys College, Sir Gary Everett. Sir, please stand and take a bow. Thank you so much for conducting such a wonderful debate. And now the debate is formally closed. Please be seated. Meanwhile, if any of you, while the judges are doing the results, anybody from the House wants to speak on the topic, I personally feel that it should not be forced. I'm very much with the opposition here and well fielded by them as well as the proposition. But yes, consent is required and we do not live in a banana republic. And there are laws, and we must all be given due considerations of citizens living within that legal parameter and not become a banana republic. All right. Anybody from our audiences, from our August audience? Yes, please come up and please introduce yourself, please. Please introduce yourself.
With due respect to the chair, I am Aditya Mishra from St. Joseph's College. Listening to the debate, I felt the need that both the sides failed to identify the basic causes of overpopulation. While none of the sides mentioned it properly, the emphasis of the topic was that forceful population control measures should be implemented in overpopulated regions and it is justifiable. Now, for the sake of the House, I need to mention this, that even students of class 10th in the Council of Indian School Certificate Examinations identify what are the basic causes of population explosion and give me a minute to shed light on them. Overpopulation has many reasons. The primary being that families who are illiterate, who do not have the basic knowledge of the implications that having an extended family they will have. The vicious cycle of begging in the country has already seen a rise. The second reason why population exploded was the need of a male son. Ladies and gentlemen, we need to understand that the society has progressed. Now, the facts that a son is required is, I think, a very primitive concept, and now it's no longer very important that we need to force it. The second thing which I feel that side proposition should have explained in a more better manner, rather to state first, is how to prevent overpopulation. It is fine that they say we will force, but can you tell what are those measures? We can't just simply say that laws are superseding something or not. Prevention, now let me shed light on some preventive measures, the factors which actually constitute population control measures. Now, the side opposition clearly mentioned there are two ends of the spectrum, mild and extreme. Let me just give you a few examples. The mild one includes barriers, physical barriers. They have a reversible process. They do not have a lasting impact. Intrauterine devices, contraceptive pills. These are some basic things which actually prevent and have an efficacy. Yes, none is 100% effective, but we do realize the fact that is it justifiable? Now, to also understand that we are not only talking about the extreme end of the spectrum, that is vasectomy and tubectomy. I cannot force someone to take a contraceptive pill considering the fact that I, according to them, will give them a milder option, aware them, and at the same time pop pills to them without their consent. Consent is very important. Now, it was right of them to state that there are rights which are absolute, but we should also understand that the extreme end of the spectrum is irreversible in nature. Ladies and gentlemen, please understand that the example of emergency side opposition stated is quite believed. The reason was that that period, the number of people who were actually vasectized were different of ages. We do not consider the fact that which one was to be done. Small children are also done with the process. So we need to understand that definition of the basic term should have been there. It is not only about rhetorics. This is a debate which has many fulcrums and pointers, and we should consider the fact that those fulcrums and pointers should be well explained and logically connected. Simply arguing on the basis that I am right or you are wrong because something on speculation is completely wrong. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much. Again, very impassioned. Thank you very much. And well spoken, my dear, from St. Joseph. Thank you so much. Do we have anybody else that wants to come up and say a few words? Yes, please do. Please keep it short and crisp. And please introduce yourself.
Right. Good morning, everyone. I am Ali Rizvi, student of class 10th and a member of the Leo team. A very good morning to one and all and the dear chairperson. I would like to take this opportunity to explain the idea behind population control. Ladies and gentlemen, understand that the idea behind population control isn't about limiting freedom. It's about ensuring survival. In a world of limited resources, it is necessary that we use them in a manner that does not strain these and we have them for the future generations. And now, as the opposition gave a very cherry-picked example of Kerala and how the education is helping there, I would also like to give a cherry-picked example of Nigeria, a country which did not force any population control, and in that country, over 70 million people do not have access to any basic necessities of life. They don't have access to clean drinking water and shelter. Over 33.5% of the population over there is unemployed as well. This is the textbook case of what happens if any proper measures are not taken to ensure population control. And they also talked about China's one-child policy. Understand that the problem was not in the idea itself, but in its implementation. It prevented a demographic catastrophe. It essentially ensured that 400 million people were not added to the workforce. Understand what would have happened if these 400 million people would have been added to the workforce. Understand the strains that it would have put on the resources. And they also gave some alternate solutions like educations, but understand that if education is not forced in a country like India, in certain regions like Rajasthan or wherever in the mainly village regions, it won't have any benefit. So I think that this is not a viable solution, and on top of that, it is very slow, and we need to take action now. With that, I would like to end my speech. Very proud to propose. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Great insight, my dear. Yes, please. Here comes our timekeeper. And we'll keep time, I'm sure.
Very good morning, everyone. My name is Manasvi. I was the timekeeper here. Now, the very basic reason why side proposition is winning this debate is two words were continuously mentioned by side opposition. That is forced and constitution. Members of the House, I would like to ask you a very simple question. What is constitution? It is basically a book that contains a number of laws. Were you present there when these laws were written? Did you give consent for the constitution? No. Anything in this world can be consented only for a particular person, not at a majority level. I was not there. How can a person force a particular law on me? If we follow what they are saying, in that case, this country would turn into a jungle. And there would be no law. Members of the House, the students who are sitting here wanted to bunk their classes, but they are actually forced to sit here. Were they consented? No. This is the very basic difference between forced and consented. There are certain things which a particular person is not aware of. I might die here. I don't want to drink water. Vinayak will come and forcefully fill my mouth with water. What if I say, no, I don't want to drink water? That means I am not consenting to that particular person. But is that good for me? No. What if you are sitting on this chair? There are 50 people sitting here. There is no, and similarly, forcing something at a majority level for the welfare of the people is not wrong, and that is why the side proposition is clearly winning this case. I am very proud to propose. Thank you.
Well timed. Timekeeper was very much in time. Thank you so much. And ouch. That was an ouchie. I don't think our boys are forced to come and look at the debate. I'm sure they came because they love coming for debates. They love to be out of their classes and wander about the campus and stroll into the Spence Hall. I'm sure that nobody was forced here. So we're all within the rules. Of course, I'm going to now announce the results. Our honorable judges have come to a result, and I think I'll jump on in front and quickly do this. I really wasn't going to jump. I thought about it, but I thought maybe not. Very unladylike to do something like that. All right, boys and girls, the motion has been carried. Congratulations, La Martiniere Boys College. And the runners-up are Calcutta Boys School, Kolkata. Well fielded, well done. Actually, a really good job. I was personally with you guys. Well done, well done, well done, well done. And boys, congratulations here. Huge congratulations, well done. The best speaker was, any guesses? Ah, he's the favorite boy around here. Krishna, can we please have you? That's the best speaker for the day. So congratulations to the winners. Mr. Craig Kerr, may I please request for you to come on the stage? For those also serve that stand behind the curtains. So thank you so much, Craig.
Thank you, ma'am. And let's have a big round of applause for Dr. Mala Mehra for keeping us so entertained through the whole event.
Thank you.
Ladies and gentlemen, it has been a fabulous debate over the course of 3 days. We've definitely enjoyed ourselves, and we know the past few nights, the participants have had a very good time, especially yesterday when they were made to do things like dance on a very tiny little piece of paper. So the whole point of this is we do hope that even though you all are participating, you'll also do come here with a feeling of fellowship. You feel that you have come home, and when you come back for more competitions, may not be debate, maybe various others, you feel like you've come back home, come back to your family, and you really, really enjoy yourself. So let's have one round of applause for all of our participants who have had such a good time and made this event possible. Let's continue that applause for our 3 judges here who have taken out their time
Yeah,
to
yeah.
make this event so great.
Yeah. 3 judges, thank you so much.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, we will ask everyone to stand as our judges and principal make their exit. However, for teacher escorts for all of our visiting teams, for our judges, for our special guests here, we will invite you now for tea at our very special blue room. So you will be escorted there. Thank you all so much for coming and making this event such a lovely thing. Yes. Thank you all.